You're no longer part of this family." My mother's voice cut through the Sunday dinner table like a knife through butter. She stood at the head of the table, her face twisted with disgust as she pointed toward the door. "Pack your things and leave. You've brought enough shame to the Whitmore name." I sat frozen, my fork halfway to my mouth, staring at the woman who raised me. Around the table, my younger brother Vincent smirked into his napkin while my father looked away, saying nothing as he always did. My crime. Choosing to marry the man I loved instead of the wealthy investor my mother had selected for me. At 23, I had committed the unforgivable sin of choosing my own path. What none of them knew as I quietly gathered my belongings that night was that I held something they would desperately need one day. My grandmother had made sure of that before she passed away 2 years earlier, leaving me instructions I didn't fully understand until this very moment. My name is Carol Whitmore, and until that Sunday dinner, I thought family meant something. I grew up in the Whitmore estate, a sprawling property in Connecticut that had been in our family for 3 generations. My grandmother Josephine had raised me more than my own mother ever did. While Mom obsessed over social status and business connections, Grandma Jo taught me about real values, hard work, and independence. She'd been a businesswoman herself back when women weren't supposed to be, building a small fortune through smart investments. When she died, she left specific instructions with her attorney. I was to receive certain documents on my 21st birthday, documents I'd kept in a safety deposit box without fully examining them. My mother assumed everything went to her as the eldest child. She'd spent 2 years acting like she owned the entire estate. Now, walking out with just 2 suitcases, I finally understood why Grandma Jo had been so insistent about those papers. I moved into a tiny apartment across town, using the small savings I'd accumulated from my job at the local library. My fiancé, Warren, stayed with his brother while we planned our simple courthouse wedding. Mom had wanted me to marry Philip Anderson, a 45-year-old investor with 3 ex-wives and a reputation for buying his way into society. When I refused, she'd made my life miserable for months. The final straw came when I announced my engagement to Warren, a high school teacher who came from a normal, loving family. "A teacher," she'd sneered. "You're throwing away your future for a man who makes $40,000 a year. You're stupider than I thought." Warren held me as I cried that first night in our new apartment. His gentle presence reminded me why I'd made the right choice, but something Mom said kept echoing in my mind. She'd mentioned renovating the estate, expanding the gardens, maybe even adding a new wing. All projects that would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Projects she couldn't afford without accessing certain funds. 2 weeks after being thrown out, I finally went to the safety deposit box. Inside were documents that made my hands shake as I read them. Grandma Jo hadn't just left me money. She'd left me something far more valuable, 51% ownership of the Whitmore estate property itself. The deed was in both our names, transferred to me upon her death. There was a letter, too, written in her elegant handwriting. "Dearest Carol," it began. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and I suspect your mother has shown her true colors. The estate was mine before I married your grandfather. I watched your mother turn it into a shrine to her own ego. The property belongs to you now. Use it wisely. Don't let her bully you into anything. And remember, real family isn't about blood or last names. It's about who stands beside you when everything falls apart. Love always, Grandma Jo." I read the letter 3 times before the reality sank in. My mother didn't own the house she lorded over everyone. I did. I didn't tell anyone about the documents. Instead, I hired an attorney named Mr. Garrison, a patient man in his 60s who'd actually worked with Grandma Jo years ago. He reviewed everything carefully, nodding as he read. "This is all legitimate and properly filed," he confirmed. "Your grandmother was very thorough. The property is legally yours. Your mother has been living there as a resident, not an owner." He explained that because Mom had never actually checked the deed after Grandma's death, she'd simply assumed inheritance worked the way she wanted it to. "She likely thinks she inherited everything as the eldest child," Mr. Garrison said. "But your grandmother's will was very specific. The estate goes to you. Your mother received other assets, stocks and bonds primarily, but not the property." I asked him to keep the information confidential for now. Something told me to wait, to see how things unfolded. Grandma Jo's letter suggested she'd known exactly what kind of person my mother was. Perhaps she'd anticipated this moment. Warren and I married in a simple ceremony at City Hall. His parents attended, along with a few close friends. My family's absence hurt, but Warren's mother hugged me tight afterward. "You're our daughter now," she whispered. "Family isn't always the people who share your blood." We honeymooned for a weekend at a bed and breakfast upstate, stretching our modest budget as far as it would go. When we returned, I threw myself into work at the library and started taking online courses in business management. If I was going to own property, I needed to understand how to manage it properly. Warren supported my decision completely, never once asking about the documents or what they meant. He trusted me to handle my family situation in my own way. Meanwhile, through mutual friends, I heard snippets about my mother's plans. She was indeed planning major renovations. She'd apparently been meeting with contractors and architects, designing expansions that would cost a fortune. 3 months passed quietly. Warren and I settled into our small apartment, building a life together on our modest incomes. I volunteered at a community center on weekends, teaching financial literacy classes to young women. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was teaching others about money management while sitting on a secret that would devastate my own mother. But I wasn't ready to reveal it yet. Grandma Jo's letter had said to use it wisely, and wisdom sometimes meant patience. Then Vincent called. My younger brother had barely spoken to me since that dinner, too caught up in Mom's approval to risk defending me. Now his voice sounded strained. "Carol, I thought you should know. Mom's taking out a massive loan against the house. Something about renovations and expanding her social club activities. Dad tried to talk her out of it, but you know how she is." My heart raced. "How massive?" $500,000. The bank needs signatures from all property stakeholders. She's been gathering documents. I thanked Vincent and hung up, my mind racing. This was it. This was the moment Grandma Jo had prepared me for. Mom was about to take out a loan against property she didn't actually own. The bank would require proof of ownership, which meant she'd finally discover the truth. Or she'd discover it when they asked for my signature as the majority owner. I called Mr. Garrison immediately. He listened carefully, then explained what would happen next. "The bank will conduct a title search as part of the loan process. They'll discover you're the primary owner. At that point, they'll require your signature for any loan secured against the property. Your mother won't be able to proceed without your consent." I asked him what my options were. "You can refuse to sign, which would block the loan entirely, or you can negotiate terms. But Carol, you need to decide what outcome you want here. This isn't just about property anymore. This is about your relationship with your family." I spent the next week thinking about what I wanted. Warren and I talked late into the night, weighing options. "What would make you happy?" he asked gently. "Not revenge, not justice, just happy." I realized I didn't want to destroy my mother. Despite everything, she was still my mom. But I also wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. I wanted respect. I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted her to understand that throwing me away had consequences. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. Mom's number flashed on the screen. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "Carol." Her voice was tight, controlled, not apologetic but not hostile either. "We need to talk. Can you come to the house?" "Why?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. There was a long pause. "There's been a complication with some paperwork. The bank needs your signature on some documents. It's just a formality, but they're insisting on it." I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. "What kind of documents?" Another pause. I could almost hear her grinding her teeth. "Property documents. Apparently there was some confusion about the estate ownership after your grandmother passed. The bank wants all family members to sign off on the loan approval." She was lying, trying to make it sound casual. She knew. The bank had told her I was the owner, and now she was scrambling. "I'll think about it," I said calmly. "Carol, this is important. The contractors are scheduled to start work next month. I've already made commitments." "Then you should have made sure you actually owned the property before making those commitments," I replied. The silence that followed was deafening. "What are you talking about?" she finally asked, her voice dangerous. "Check the deed, Mom. Really look at it this time. Then call me back when you're ready to have an honest conversation." I hung up before she could respond. Warren squeezed my hand as I set the phone down. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Scared, powerful, sad, all at once." My phone started ringing again immediately. I ignored it. Then text messages started coming through. First from Mom, demanding I explain myself. Then from my father, asking me to please call. Then Vincent, sounding panicked, saying Mom was losing her mind and what had I done. I responded only to Vincent. Ask Mom to show you Grandma Joe's will and the property deed. Read them carefully, then decide if I'm the villain here. An hour later, Vincent called back. Holy hell, Carol, you own the house. This whole time you've owned it. Grandma Joe left it to me. Mom never bothered to check. She just assumed. Vincent was quiet for a moment. Mom's freaking out. She's been on the phone with her attorney for the past 30 minutes. Dad's just sitting there looking shocked. What are you going to do? What was I going to do? That was the question. I had the power to block Mom's loan, to demand she pay rent, to even evict her if I wanted to be cruel. But Grandma Joe's letter echoed in my mind. Use it wisely. Wisdom wasn't about wielding power to hurt people. It was about using power to create better outcomes. 3 days later, I agreed to meet Mom at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. She arrived exactly on time, dressed impeccably as always, but I noticed the tension around her eyes. We sat across from each other in uncomfortable silence before she finally spoke. Your grandmother did this on purpose, she said, her voice bitter. She wanted to humiliate me. No, I replied calmly. She wanted to protect me. There's a difference. Mom's jaw tightened. You realize you're destroying my plans. I've made commitments to contractors, to the Historical Society, to my clubs. People are expecting these renovations. You made those commitments without ensuring you had the authority to follow through. That's not my problem. Mom's face flushed with anger, but she controlled it. I could see her struggling, probably for the first time in her life, to not simply bulldoze her way through. She needed something from me, and we both knew it. What do you want? She finally asked. An apology, money, to move back into the house. I want you to understand why Grandma Joe did this, I said. She saw how you treated people, how you valued status over substance, money over kindness. She spent her whole life watching you turn into someone she didn't recognize, and she knew you'd eventually do the same thing to me. That's not fair, Mom protested. I raised you, I gave you everything. You gave me material things. Grandma Joe gave me love, guidance, and apparently the wisdom to protect myself from you. Mom flinched. For just a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Pain, maybe, or recognition. So you're going to block the loan, ruin everything. I pulled out a folder I'd prepared with Mr. Garrison's help. I'm willing to sign for the loan under certain conditions. Mom's eyes narrowed. What conditions? First, you publicly acknowledge that I'm the property owner. No more pretending you inherited everything. Second, you apologize to Warren and me for how you treated us. A real apology, not just words. Third, the loan amount gets reduced to something reasonable. Mr. Garrison reviewed your renovation plans. $500,000 is excessive. $200,000 covers the necessary updates without the vanity projects. I slid the folder across the table. Fourth, once the loan is paid off, you and Dad can live in the estate for the rest of your lives, rent-free. But you don't make major decisions about the property without consulting me. And fifth, you treat Warren with the same respect you'd show any family member. No more comments about his salary or his background. Mom stared at the folder like it might bite her. You've thought this through. I've had 3 months to think about it. 3 months of living in a tiny apartment while you planned your grand renovations in a house you don't actually own. She opened the folder slowly, reading through the terms Mr. Garrison had drafted. I watched emotions play across her face. Anger, resentment, maybe even a touch of respect. And if I don't agree, she asked. Then I don't sign. The bank won't approve your loan. You explain to all your social club friends why the renovations aren't happening. And eventually, you might want to discuss fair market rent for living in my property. It was harsh, but necessary. For the first time in my life, I had leverage with my mother, and I intended to use it wisely, not cruelly, but not as a doormat either. Mom closed the folder. I need time to discuss this with your father. You have 1 week. After that, the offer expires. I left the coffee shop feeling lighter than I had in months. Warren was waiting in our car, and I slid into the passenger seat with a sigh. How'd it go? He asked, squeezing my hand. I laid out the terms, now we wait. That week felt endless. Mom didn't call, didn't text. Vincent checked in twice, saying Mom and Dad were having serious discussions behind closed doors. Dad actually seems relieved, Vincent admitted. I think he's tired of pretending we're some kind of dynasty family. He asked me about you and Warren yesterday, wanted to know if you were happy. That surprised me. Dad had always been passive, letting Mom run everything. Maybe this situation was forcing him to finally take a position. 6 days after our meeting, Mom called. We accept your terms. Her voice was stiff, formal. All of them? Yes, all of them. Your attorney can send over the final paperwork. I felt a mix of triumph and sadness. Victory, but at what cost? The signing happened 2 weeks later in Mr. Garrison's office. Mom and Dad arrived first, both looking uncomfortable. Then Warren and I walked in together. I'd insisted he be present. This was about acknowledging him as part of the family, not just securing property rights. Mr. Garrison walked everyone through the documents. The loan would be for $250,000 after Mom agreed to scale back her most extravagant plans. The estate would remain in my name. Mom and Dad would have lifetime residency rights. All parties signed where indicated. When it was done, Mr. Garrison excused himself to make copies, leaving the four of us in awkward silence. Finally, Mom spoke. I owe you an apology. The words sounded painful coming out. Both of you, I was wrong to judge your relationship based on financial status. Warren, you've been nothing but respectful and kind, and I treated you poorly. Carol, you're my daughter, and I should have supported your choice. It wasn't the most eloquent apology, but it was sincere. I could see the effort it took for her to say those words. Thank you, I said quietly. That means more than you know. Dad cleared his throat. I should have spoken up at that dinner. I was a coward, and I'm sorry, sweetheart. You deserved better from both of us. Warren, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. I appreciate the apology, both of you. Carol loves you even after everything. She just wanted to be respected for her choices. Mom nodded stiffly. The tension was still there. Years of patterns wouldn't dissolve in one conversation, but it was a start. Before we left, Mom asked if we'd consider coming to dinner next Sunday. Nothing fancy, she added quickly. Just family. I looked at Warren, who nodded slightly. We'll be there, I agreed. But Mom, if you ever try to control my life like that again, these papers won't protect you. Understood? Understood, she replied. The Sunday dinner was strange. We sat at the same table where I'd been disowned months earlier, but everything felt different. Mom had actually cooked instead of hearing caterers. Dad asked Warren about his teaching job with genuine interest. Vincent was friendlier than he'd been in years. I talked to Philip Anderson last week, Vincent mentioned casually. Apparently he's engaged again. 4th time. The woman's 26. Mom actually winced. I suppose I owe you another apology, Carol. You were right about him. I was so focused on his money that I didn't see who he really was. I accepted her words with a nod. Progress was progress. Over the next few months, something unexpected happened. My relationship with my parents slowly began to heal. Mom still had her moments of snobbery, but she caught herself now. She asked Warren about his students, complimented the simple meals we cooked when they visited our apartment. Dad started calling me weekly just to chat. The renovations on the estate proceeded smoothly. Mom consulted me on major decisions, though I could tell it pained her to ask permission in what she still thought of as her house. But she did it. One afternoon, she called me to the estate to look at paint samples for the library. As we stood in Grandma Jo's favorite room, surrounded by books and memories, Mom spoke quietly. She knew, didn't she? Your grandmother. She knew exactly what would happen. I think so, I admitted. She knew you'd eventually push me away, and she knew I'd need protection. Mom was silent for a long moment. I wish I'd been different. I wish I'd been more like her. It was the most vulnerable I'd ever heard her sound. You still can be, I said gently. It's not too late to change. She looked at me with watery eyes. I'm proud of you, Carol. I should have said that a long time ago. Warren and I started attending family dinners regularly. Vincent and I rebuilt our sibling relationship, going out for coffee and actually talking about real things instead of surface pleasantries. He admitted he'd always admired my courage to stand up to Mom. I'm still working on that, he confessed. But watching you helped me realize I don't have to follow her script either. He'd started dating a woman he actually cared about, someone Mom didn't approve of because she was a nurse rather than a doctor or lawyer. But this time, he stood his ground. If Mom can accept Warren, she can accept Jamie, he told me firmly. I supported him completely, even offering advice on how to navigate Mom's inevitable objections. The estate renovations finished beautifully. Mom had toned down her extravagant vision, and the result was elegant restoration rather than showy display. She invited us for a tour, and I had to admit she'd done well. Grandma Jo would have approved, I told her, and she actually smiled. A year after that devastating Sunday dinner, Warren and I announced we were expecting our first child. Mom's reaction surprised everyone. She cried, actual tears of joy, and asked if she could help prepare a nursery. Not at your apartment, she added quickly. Here at the estate, so the baby has a proper room when you visit. It was progress. Even if she still couldn't resist adding proper to the sentence. Dad was overjoyed, already planning grandfather activities. Vincent was excited about becoming an uncle. For the first time in a long time, family felt like what it was supposed to be. The baby's nursery at the estate became a joint project. Mom and I spent weekends painting and decorating, actually working together instead of clashing. She shared stories about my childhood I'd never heard before, gentler memories that had been buried under years of tension. Your grandmother would have loved knowing you had a child, Mom said one afternoon, carefully arranging stuffed animals on a shelf. She always said you'd be a wonderful mother. Our daughter was born on a sunny morning in May. We named her Josephine after Grandma Jo. When Mom held her for the first time, something shifted in her expression. All the hardness, all the social climbing, all the status-seeking seemed to melt away as she looked at her granddaughter. "Hello, sweet Josie," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I promised to be better for you." And she was. Over the following years, Mom transformed into a devoted grandmother. She still had her moments of being overbearing, but they were motivated by love now rather than control. She and Warren developed a genuine friendship, bonding over their shared love for historical documentaries and their dedication to Josie. The estate became a gathering place for genuine family connection rather than status displays. Mom's social club friends still visited, but she'd stopped trying to impress them with extravagant parties. Instead, she hosted simple family barbecues, where Josie could run through the gardens Grandma Jo had planted decades earlier. On Josie's 3rd birthday, we held a party at the estate. Watching my daughter run through the same halls where I'd grown up, seeing 3 generations of family laughing together, I thought about Grandma Jo's letter. She'd been right about everything. Real family wasn't about blood or last names. It was about who stood beside you when everything fell apart. Mom approached me as I watched Josie blow out her candles. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for giving me another chance. For not cutting me out of your life completely when you had every right to." "Grandma Jo didn't give me that property to punish you," I replied. "She gave it to me to make sure I'd always be okay, no matter what, and to teach both of us that real power isn't about control. It's about choosing connection over revenge." Mom nodded, understanding finally settling in her eyes. She was wiser than all of us. That evening, after guests had left, I stood in the estate library holding the original deed. Grandma Jo had known exactly what she was doing. She'd given me not just property, but the power to reshape my family's future. 5 years after being thrown out of my family, I sat at the head of the Sunday dinner table, Josie on my lap, Warren beside me. Mom and Dad flanked us on either side, with Vincent and his wife Jamie completing the circle. The Whitmore estate still stood, beautifully maintained, filled with laughter instead of tension. Mom still consulted me on major property decisions, but it had become collaboration rather than obligation. We'd even discussed eventually transferring the estate into a family trust that would benefit future generations while preserving Grandma Jo's legacy. "To family," Dad proposed, raising his glass. "The family we build, not just the one we're born into." We all clinked glasses, even Josie with her plastic cup. I thought about that moment months ago when Mom had called demanding my signature, expecting me to simply comply. She'd learned that respect isn't demanded, it's earned. And that sometimes the people you throw away are the ones holding the keys to everything you value. Grandma Jo had given me more than property. She'd given me the power to choose forgiveness without sacrificing dignity, to demand respect without seeking revenge, and to understand that the greatest inheritance wasn't land or money. It was the wisdom to know that family, real family, is built on mutual respect and unconditional love. And in the end, that wisdom had saved us all.